design, 3D visualization, and design research. She leads a large-scale campus projects of over 1 million square feet, creating human-centric and sustainable workplaces for Fortune 500 companies and global industry giants.
Architect Fancy George is also the co-founder of Vionet's World, a non-profit organization that works to promote women's leadership and diversity, equity, and inclusion in the real estate industry in India. She's a sought-after speaker and a thought leader on workplace design and advisor for several workplace publications and knowledge forums. She's passionate about applying circular user experience and universal design principles to her work, aiming to deliver life-centric solutions that enhance the well-being and productivity of the users of the spaces that she creates.
I would like to call upon Architect Fancy George to arrive on stage and request Professor Uma Yadav, Faculty of School of Architecture, to present ma'am with a token of our welcome. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to be a little casual about this. I think, first of all, I have to answer the question that's topmost in all your minds. Yeah, my name is Fancy. I hope I've answered that question. So now that's out of your mind, and then let's just start with what I'm going to be talking about today, okay? My mother thought it was a great name. She had some senior in college who was Fancy, and she thought like her brains would pass down to me, so that's how I got this name. It's Fancy George. Okay, so basically, Sridhar, thank you so much for setting the tone. I'm going to be touching upon a lot of what he discussed, because I think it's important to continue this. He spoke about it at a really high level. I'd like to try and break it down to, like, as you as students, what is it that you need to do to just move forward with this, with whatever I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to touch upon a lot of things. Some of them may sound a little basic, but I think it's important to touch upon this to, for your careers, and what is it that you need to take away from this. I'll touch upon a few of those things, okay? So I am a workplace architect. I have about 30 years of experience in this industry. And in 1992, when I graduated, yeah, that's when I graduated, there was nothing like a workplace architect. I was an architect like you guys. I graduated and then moved to an architectural firm, and I was told to start doing workplaces. I had to learn on the job. So which is why, listen to me very carefully when I'm talking about a lot of things, because I literally had to learn on the job, and there were no textbooks teaching me what I had to do. Okay, and so basically to give you a little background, I think they went through all of this, but I consider myself a little bit of a global citizen. I was born in the island of Borneo in Malaysia. That's East Malaysia. Okay, and that's the part you don't hear about. Very rich in natural resources, and very well sought after by a lot of people for its natural minerals. So there were a lot of questions that bothered me because of where I was from. I also run this, I'm a co-founder of Vionet, of Women in Real Estate, like you just mentioned. Why we did this is because we found that a lot of times in our industry, we would be the only one woman sitting in a boardroom. and there'll be like some 10 other men in there, so that bothered me a bit. So we decided we had to push women into higher leadership roles. There used to be a lot of women at mid-level roles. So we are putting ourselves out there. There are 7 of us. These are the 7. So if you really need to reach out to any of us, you can find us on LinkedIn. Okay, so, now to really start, right? A few years back, I think we were doing a project somewhere in Delhi, and I saw this huge landfill out there. It was like a mountain of garbage, literally a mountain of garbage. And that just kind of literally hit me somewhere. You know, I just thought we really need to make a difference as architects, conscious, responsible architects. We should be a lot more bothered about things like this that we see. So that was my starting point on this journey, right? And literally, I think what we need to do as architects is to question a lot of principles, a lot of things that you're being taught. You know, forgive me for, it's not like I'm telling you shouldn't be listening to your professors, but please learn to question every single thing that you're being taught. It has to make logical sense to you, because at the end of the day, you have to be, it's about the intent. The intent has to be right. Okay? So what I am going to do today is kind of run through a couple of these things, right? Are we all like big on yoga? Yoga makes a difference to us, yes? Yeah? And are we big believers of recycling and upcycling? Yeah? I find actually that my generation needs to learn from your generation, because I feel like a lot of you guys are already doing what we haven't been doing for so many years. So it's a good thing to hear that. And these are some of the things that I'm going to be touching upon really today. So let's start with yoga. What does it do to you, right? We, for a long time, even me, okay, we had to learn so many more years later in our life that this is something that it's not religious. It's just a way of life. It's got to be something that you need to do as a baseline to take care of yourself, your body. You need to take care of yourself. And if you take care of yourself, you can take care of the planet. You can take care of anything and everything. This has to be baseline, right? The other thing that, we learn from our grandparents, you see this? Towels. I always used to wonder why the towels were never thrown in our homes. And then we got to our age where we started taking, things that were like bought from stores. And, you have this really fancy looking microfiber that we use. But what did our grandparents do? They used to save every single item in their homes. Every towel was like cut into little pieces, and those went into wiping your floors, wiping your furniture. Nothing was thrown, right? Are we coming back into that? Are we coming back to that culture, the way of life? Jyoti was just telling me today about the Crystal House and that beautiful technology center that you have. Please don't forget that you need to draw, okay? Draw, because at the end of it, what happens is like, there's a little bit of an energy that comes when you take a piece of pen and pencil and draw what is there in your head. It makes a huge difference. This is actually a project done by Thomas Associates, only Mr. Thomas, and that's a sketch up there. You never know what you're starting with when you pick a pen. Of course, technology, you can't run away from it. You definitely need it. But this is something that I find a lot of younger generation are struggling with, a piece of pen, paper, pencil, doodling. The energy that comes through you when you kind of start doodling, it's very, very different. You never know what you're going to end up with, but you end up with something always, and then at the end of the day, it just always makes a lot of sense. The last thing that I want to talk about here is also something that, how many of us would go back to our grandparents' farms, and there's always this backyard where your grandfathers actually planted that tree, that jamun tree, there's a mango tree, there's a guava tree, and such pleasure eating from those trees and plucking the fruits and eating those. And here nowadays we're living in these concrete jungles. So is there any way of trying to bring that back into the way we are living our lives right now. Okay, so is wellness just a priority box to tick? I want you all to focus on this picture a little bit, okay? It's a house in Kerala. It's a house in Kerala. People sit out there. I just want to come back to this sometime towards the end of it. Wow, so good. Right? COVID hit. People went on treks, went to the beach, went onto these nice, lovely, rocky bits. Can you have that back in an office? Now, this is an article from New York Times. Say goodbye to the boring conference room. Okay? What is happening now since then is the fact that, you know, we had so many things like efficiencies to take care of. We had like, you know, people that we had to stuff into an office space. And I myself personally was struggling with that a lot. Because I would argue and they would say, hey, profit. You mentioned that just now. Like, so these are the kind of things that we are constantly struggling with. But now, because of what's happened over the last 2-3 years, this is now taken a top priority for a lot of us. And right now, the redesign is happening in the workplaces where this becomes a priority. But if you actually look at it, our parents, grandparents, you go into a village if you want, the meetings happen around a little tree there. A lot of times, the meeting happens under a tree. And we kind of lost it over the years, started building glass boxes, and, you know, now we need to start rethinking how we are doing our workplaces, okay? So I'm going to today try and show you a few examples, literally, of some of these things. Circular design, you touched upon the circular economy bit, but circular design is kind of probably answering one of the questions that was asked as well. How best can we design so that it's zero to landfill? It starts at that design stage, okay? And I'm also going to go through a little bit on, you know, questioning on recycled, upcycled products, modular, flexible solutions. Do you know what a workplace architect does? Do any of you know what a workplace architecture is? So it's a little bit of a struggle for me because every time we're looking at students coming in from universities, I'll say, okay, let's do workplace architecture. I'm saying, no, but I want to do architecture, not workplace. You see, it is not an interior design job. It's about understanding people, understanding the environment, understanding the people, planet, place, and then designing workplaces around it. Very interesting. A lot of times we get students who come in here, understand what we're doing, and it just really becomes their thing to do for the next few years. So I'm touching upon these as examples because I think it's important for you to understand what is happening in the industry. This is Parsons School of Design, and there is a program that they run, textile design. So that's like the baseline. What is happening out there that I'm seeing at least is students going into the dump yards, finding garbage and waste, and making fabric, and making products out of it. That's amazing. And that's happening at your level. I mean, they're all your age, and these are the students that you see up on there. And what you see on the right side is bioluminescent beads. These beads were made from plankton from the sea, you know, collected, and beads were made out of it, and fabrics made out of that. And down there, clothes, old clothes, recycled, and then they're made, those felt panels are made out of recycled old clothes. How best can you guys think about how you can contribute? This is happening at your age group right now in many different parts of the world. And I know that there are probably, if I talk to you right now, I'm sure you're going to come up with examples of what you're doing, and we want to hear that. But we as industry folk has to learn from that. You know, because we're so busy just sitting here building newer workplaces and offices. We need to like talk a little bit more of how can we push this industry to be a lot more sustainable. This is one of our projects that we did. So here the big focus was on sustainability. It's a workplace for Fortune 500 company. So one of the things we tried to do was to save a lot of materials in this. If you see the one on the right side there, the light boxes, Those are made out of tabletops. Somebody was mentioning something about how much more expensive it is, but these are, if you actually apply your brain, apply your mind, ask so many questions, you can come up with great answers and great solutions. But you need to ask. Don't ever sit there thinking he knows better than me. There is no harm in asking questions. Okay? So on the right side, and the carpets and all of that stuff, I think some 65%, if you see the aluminum partitions, they were all taken out from the same site, put back into the same site. It wasn't taken out of the site. So if you want to really think of how best you can be sustainable, solutions will come up to you like really quickly. Here is another project that we tried to save a lot of, what do you call it? This was an existing office, and we tried to bring in a lot of greens and came up, I think we kind of saved about 90% of materials that was in that particular project back into the project. How? By reusing the grid system for the ceiling, reusing existing HVAC ducts. So there are ways to do this, okay? Here is a lighting company that is actually renting light fixtures. So light as a service is coming now. Because how many of us are sitting here and constantly, when you start renovating your homes, what do you do with the old fittings and fixtures? You don't know where to even throw it. And what do you do about it? So leasing may be the option going forward, and this is for larger scales that I'm talking about, okay? And flexibility. So in workplaces, the other thing that happens is, typically we design workplaces for about 5 to 10 years. 10 years later, it becomes old. And then somebody else comes in and says, oh, it's too old. But if you make them a lot more flexible, which means you can move things around, move furniture around, move partitions around, you just have to move it from that point to some other place where then you can reuse it, just change out the fabric. But what do you do with the fabric? There are things that you can do with the fabric as well, like we talked about that felt panel. The other thing that comes up always is the fact that we need to look into this, which is neurodiverse workplace design. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'll tell you. So what happens is like, we're constantly told, oh, you're old. You're like 50 years old, your mind is fixed, and so we can't do anything much about you. But hey, there are 20 to 30-year-olds who are actually introverts. I'm sure there are many among you who don't want to be sitting in this public space right now. And then there are people who are extroverts who don't mind sitting here and doing that hooting that he banned you from doing. So there are different types and kinds of people. We cannot do one kind of workplace that fits everybody. We need to consider every single neurodiverse aspect of the brain and neurodiverse aspect of even age groups. There is no one size fits all in anything that we do. So we consider all that. Then connecting back to nature. I talked about this to some extent, right? We've got to kind of move away when you design, move away from glass boxes, try and see how you can fit in nature. You built a beautiful airport in a garden. How can you bring that back into workplaces in gardens? The biggest thing that I used to keep hearing all the time is it's just too expensive to maintain and I don't want to get into it. You got to go back and cross-question things like that. Okay. Here are some things that are also important. You will come across like a lot of spaces that will need natural light, sunlight. So as much as possible, trying to design around it to make sure that everybody benefits from it. And someone also touched upon culture. Okay, you need to also, when designing workplaces, tell a story around it. That's also really, really important, because without a story, where's the fun in that, okay? At the same time, you need to connect that back to engaging your community. So here's a project we did on the right side that's actually engaged a whole village in Channapatna. These are giant dolls, okay? And this was done about 10 to 15 years back. because of obvious reasons. We're talking about it now rather than 10 years back. And look at this on the right side. This is actually a public space done by Salesforce, not my project, but what they did was picked up this whole park and opened it out into the public so that everybody could kind of enjoy the space. So it's very important when you design anything to try and see how you can engage back with with the community itself, okay? I thought this was important because somebody was asking about it. This is actually the Google's campus in San Francisco, San Jose. It's a new one. It's called the Google Bay Views Campus, Silicon Valley. So this one, it is a circular, this is actually a project that used 90% of construction waste. It kind of diverted 90% of construction waste from the landfills back into their project. And the other beautiful thing about this is like they designed it such that it kind of gelled with the landscape to some extent. But for me, I think it made a difference when I heard this particular line. When you walk in and then you look up, you see a lot of smiles. Did you even think, the way this whole building is thought out is beautiful. So how best can you think every single aspect of what you're designing out is also, something that you need to look at. Nowadays, there's also this particular group called the Good Light Group that is actually making light that mimics natural light. It's not just mimicking natural light, it also actually gives you the same health benefit that natural light gives you. So this is a not-for-profit organization somewhere in Europe. So having said all that, I keep saying this is a passion talk because I'm bothered because of the fact that I don't know if we as a real estate community are doing enough. And, somebody just mentioned that you guys keep talking so much, but how do we implement this? I think we need to start asking so many questions. We have to ask the right questions. And as you guys are young, you have to start asking right questions to get the right, answers for yourself. So we're getting somewhere, and I told you that I'm going to kind of come back to this slide to some extent, right? So this happens to be a house in Kerala. Every time I have suggested that we should do like an outdoor meeting room in any of our projects, the first thing I hear is it's too hot. Don't put a meeting room outside. But what if we design around that problem by bringing in its own ecosystem? There is water, there are a lot of plants around, there's so much happening around that makes you're just building an ecosystem that makes it comfortable for people to sit outside. That is totally in your hands. You can do that. So don't say that it's hot, Kerala, it's hot, you can't do this. So this is like very possible, and this I'm bringing it up as an example because you're going to hear this all the time. Oh, this is Delhi, it's too hot, don't do that. Oh, no, this is the way it is. I think it's up to you to kind of push back on many of those things that you hear and start asking questions, okay? I'm very, very impressed with this architect. He's architect Venu Daniel. I don't know if you've heard about him. Oh, look, now everyone's woken up, okay? So what he did with this is he found plastic bottles within a 1 kilometer or a 2 kilometer radius in that site, filled it with concrete, and built all of that snake beams that you see on top. And he says, he doesn't sit here and say, oh, I hear this all the time. Can we build it? No, I can't build it. I don't know how to do that. But what he did is he got his hands dirty. He goes down there and builds it. He and his team. What's stopping you all from doing it? Right? So anything is possible. Please, as a young generation of architects, think for yourself, think for the preservation of the planet. Okay, it always starts with the right intent. If your intent is right, nothing like it. So being conscious, bring some emotion into your design. Don't just do it because it looks good, and that's a wrong thing. You always, please never say that, it looks good. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the emotion that is what is the emotion that's coming out in you when you're doing what you're doing? How important is the health of the planet to you? You can add on to these, huh? But then what I'm saying is like we need to work as a community. I was just talking to Jyoti just now. Something that we should probably do is kind of collaborate as an industry with young students. There's an idea. You have an idea, let's talk about it. Maybe we can connect you with somebody in the industry. So, you know, we really need to be a lot more conscious and stop talking and start doing, right? So we learn a lot. You're learning a lot now, you've learned a lot. You need to also unlearn what you've learned. That's important. And big respect to your professors here. But you guys need to start questioning everything you've learned, and you're going to relearn. Because you will come up with those fantastic, brilliant ideas. And all those questions you're asking right now, you'll probably have an answer for it if you put your mind to it. Okay? Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing your knowledge with us. It was a truly enlightening session.
Now it's time for our interactive session. We are open to taking questions, and you can clarify your doubts with ma'am. Can I request the volunteers to pass around the mics? Does anyone have any questions?
Well, if they don't have questions, I have questions for you. I want semester 6 students to get up and ask her 3 questions that we discussed this morning. If you don't, I don't see you in the class tomorrow. Get up. Very relevant question. Relevant topic she talked about, right?
Sixth semester.
It's not really a question, but I just would like to know about the first picture that you've shown with the cart. And you were so passionate about it. You said, you know, mark this slide, something of that sort. You said you'll come back. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So it was actually built by a civil engineer or or a person who's a wannabe architect. He's my sister-in-law's father. So passionate that what he does is he goes to all of these, you know, if you go driving in Kerala, how many of you are from Kerala? How many of you have seen doors being sold on the side of the road? Doors, carts, grills, no? Especially if you go in Alapi. Right? So what he did is, over like some 10, 15 years, he's been going, buying all of that stuff, and he's got like a house load of it, and then it goes into his house slowly, one by one, built by his own hands. Right? So what he did is, he built an ecosystem, like they don't sit inside the house. They sit out in the courtyard. And this is Kerala. Right? You guys sit in a courtyard inside because what happens is you're like creating that whole ecosystem such that, you know, you're growing plants, you're growing trees, and then there is a water body that's cooling that place down. What is stopping you from doing something like that here? What do we do here? We sit in an air-conditioned cafe, very happy sitting in an air-conditioned cafe. Our bodies are getting used to that. We need to start, you know, thinking like our grandparents. They were comfortable with heat. They were comfortable sweating. In fact, I was just sweating today, and I told them to, that's just for like now. But, you know, the thing is like, learn from how our ancestors were living their lives. And you can learn a lot. I mean, what I'm telling you is like basic. If you research, you'll get a lot more information. Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Now I understand. Now I connect the excitement when you've seen the pavilion being made by the students.
Yeah, because I don't see many houses with all of these, recycled elements. No, it's all upcycled. Zero to waste has to be the bottom line. Like you're mentioning, like zero, how do you do that? You do that by actually, in the procurement strategy, you can question people who are coming with you with a product and selling it. Ask them, is it 100% recycled materials that gone into making your product? Ask them that question. They'll tell you it's recyclable. They won't have that other answer. But if you start asking that, that's the focus. Then that's going to be a game changer. And we did that with a lot of industries. And I think now there's a little bit of a turn in the way they're approaching products and materials.
With that, we have come to an end to today's event. We would like to thank Mr. Sridhar for his words on a sustainable future. I would like to invite Sir onto the stage, and also followed by Professor Ajay Chandran from School of Architecture to present him with a momentum of our gratitude. Kindly come on stage. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words on conservational architecture. I would now like to welcome Dr. Jayaprakash to present Ms. Fancy George with the memento.
Kindly join us on stage, ma'am. Kindly give our speakers a huge round of applause for their words and motivational and tips that they've given us to make a better future.
Thank you all for being a wonderful audience. Thank you to all the faculty members, members of the management, and volunteers for being the backbone of the smooth run of the event.
With all this information, knowledge, facts, and wisdom given to us today, I would like to end this session with a thought-provoking quote. Without knowledge, action is useless, and knowledge without action is futile. To acquire knowledge, one must study, but to acquire wisdom, one must observe. To know that we know what we know, and to know that we do not know what we do not know, that is true knowledge. Knowledge is power.
We trust that the session imparted knowledge and wisdom for your future endeavors, and that now you are one step closer to understanding your paths.
Kindly rise for the university anthem.